It's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this panel, Ms. Jan Miller, who's president of Lowenbe Holdings. Jan, as you know, is an industry veteran with over 20 years on the international scene. So over the next hour or so, she's going to be leading a 1-hour discussion on the ins and outs of market preparedness with our esteemed panelists. Jan?
Thanks, Suzanne. Thank you very much for coming. CMPA felt that there was great value in creating a sort of discussion, and in fact they're calling this session partly a workshop, to reach out to the new generation of talent, specifically to introduce them to the international marketplace. And it's fabulous. So that's where we're starting from. And that Canada is known for traveling internationally with our carrying all that we have to offer, both within our own province, with our crews, with our talent, with our content. And the lovely women that I have with me started out at that first market and now are active participants at markets throughout the year. So the plan for this next hour is to talk initially. I'm going to give you 10 pointers about what to think about as you prepare for market. Thank you. Okay. Oh, hello. Wow, it sounds great, eh? Okay, that's very loud. All right, so what I've done is I've put, it's called Pitching 101 and Prepping for the Marketplace. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk to each of dear friends who are going to give their perspective on the marketplace. So initially, it's almost impossible to do business in Canada if you're not thinking internationally. Partly for content, for a lot of reasons, financing. And so everyone needs the opportunity to go out there. And I think that a great place to get your feet wet is here at an event like Primetime, or possibly the Banff Media Festival, or Hot Docs, TIFF. They're all local festivals and markets where you can begin to understand the process of working a market. In preparing for the market, there's sort of 10 questions that I encourage those that I work with to think about. Before you go to the market, you want to, I think key is what are your goals for that marketplace? Your goals will absolutely be different if it's your first market, if it's the first time you go to Cannes, first time you go to Berlin, first time you go to Banff, than if it's your second or third time. And I think what's key as you prepare for that market is to know what your goals are. And the goals may simply be, and I really encourage this for the first time you go, is to get the lay of the land. You don't necessarily have to go there. I remember many times going to Banff, and as first-time producers, there was the competition with, I have 20 meetings, I have 35 meetings, I have 45 meetings. And it was instead of thinking about what you have to bring and who you want to reach, it's all about the number of meetings. And I really want to encourage that first time you go to the marketplace, you don't have to set up a whole bunch of meetings. It can be incredibly intimidating. And as we talked yesterday with the interns, that, you know, you work with a buddy system so that you have somebody to walk into the reception with, so that you're not the wallflower, and you can talk to each other until you find the people that you need to meet. So what are your goals? Is it to, and in fact, each of these, our two producers and then from Telefilm Canada, will hear about what their goals are when they go to the marketplace. When you're preparing to go to a market, the best place to start is to look at the delegate list. I know this is very sort of early on in the process, but it's hugely valuable because what you want to do is see who is going to be attending the market and then be selective about those people you want to meet with. Again, it's not volume, it's targeting. And a question that people often ask me is, well, how do you set up those meetings? So we actually are going to go right to those very basics. When you're setting up a meeting, the best thing to do is that you send an email and you give a choice of times. You say, my name is Jan Miller and I'm here to pitch a children's animation series and I would love to meet with you to tell you about it. And I'd like to suggest these 2 times and I'll follow up with you or please get back to me. You want to reduce the number of emails going back and forth. And if you've selected a couple of times and they've selected a couple of times, then you can narrow it down quite quickly and set up your meeting. You should select who you want to meet with based on what you have to offer. Assuming that you do have property to market, then there are specific people that are right for that. And it's important that you don't spend time meeting with somebody who isn't right for that project. Perhaps the most important thing that you can learn about, learn in going to a market is knowing the person you're meeting with and what they're looking for. You start from there because the advantage of knowing what they're looking for and if it's what you have to offer, then you're starting the meeting at a good place. So you always want to research the person you're meeting with and find out everything you can about them, other people that have worked with them, what may be on their broadcast schedule, what they distribute, if you're looking for a producer, the kind of projects that they have already produced. Also, when you do your research, you're looking for connections that you can bring into the conversation. I think that too often when we think of a meeting, we think it's all like, I'm going to come to this meeting, I'm going to talk, and I'm not going to give them a chance to breathe or anything, because if they breathe, then chances are they're going to leave, so I'm just going to keep talking. You want to have a very clear idea of not only your project, but if there's a personal connection. So if I was perhaps meeting with somebody in this room shortly after this, I would not only talk about the great panel that you were just at, but I'd also talk about the hockey game, because that's current and topical. And it's a way to sort of break the ice so that you can begin the conversation to talk about the project. So knowing who you're meeting with and setting up meetings so that it's not, you're not going meeting to meeting to meeting. It's not about number of meetings. It's about quality of meetings. It is possible to pitch projects before they're ready. And you need to ask yourself that question. I think, too, I work with producers and filmmakers all over the world. And I must admit that in most of my workshops, I'm saying, your project isn't ready to pitch. And what makes it ready to pitch is that you know the material inside out and you're not avoiding the ending or specific areas that you're not clear about. You need to know the beginning, middle, and end. You need to know what the strong characters are, what the conflict is, what the overall arc of the story is, whether it's factual entertainment, whether it's dramatic television, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's working on the net. Those elements are the same because ultimately pitching is storytelling. And, since we're all kids, we've all got spidey senses. At 6 o'clock you get that phone call and you say, Mrs. Miller, and you know right away that it's a phone call to sell you something. And your spider senses go up, and I usually say, I'm sorry, I'm just about to sit down to dinner for 12 people. Could you call me back? What nobody can resist is a good story. And the clearer you are about your story, the stronger you engage. And when we're talking story, we're not talking that you end up in 5 minutes, you should be able to tell your story, the strengths of the story, and what you're bringing to the table. So the log line, a strong log line, whether it's TV series, whether it's a feature film, whether it's a webisode, they all need that bite-size, delicious description of your project that gives them enough to go back to their colleagues and convince them to come on board. So if you have a good title, you have a good log line, you have a good synopsis, then they take that to their colleagues and use and work with it to help bring their colleagues on board. I can tell you, when I hear a good pitch, I can repeat it. And I've often pitched when I'll come back from a program and I'll say, there's an incredible pitch and I can deliver it. And that's what the people that you meet with end up having to do. They have to bring your material to somebody else. You need to know before you go into the meeting what you want out of the meeting. And yes, everybody's looking for financing or everybody's looking for a yes. But what I've discovered is that whoever you're speaking with knows more than you do about their area of expertise. And if you're familiar, if you've done your research and you've looked into what this person is bringing to the table, then you have the opportunity to ask questions about that that will help you as you go forward in your career. I remember years ago when I was doing a pitch, it was with a Western broadcaster, and I think Malcolm Knox might remember, but it was when the whole takeover of the different broadcasters was happening. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how it worked. And I was going in to pitch to get financing for the National Screen Institute at the time. And I wasn't sure who I should be talking to in the broadcast, with this particular broadcaster. And I'd done my research, and I'd looked on the net, and I couldn't figure it out. And I just actually went in and sat down, and I said, you know, I really need to understand exactly how the new landscape is working. And that broadcaster drew me a picture. And at the time, we didn't actually end up talking about the closing a deal, but I went away with a knowledge that affected how I went forward. So you can never, unless you choose not to listen, a conversation is always valuable. I remember once somebody saying to me, okay, I want you to show me the perfect pitch. And I went, I should be able to do that. And then I realized, you know when you've done a good pitch when somebody wants to meet with you again. They may not be interested in the project that you're involved in specifically, but they become interested in you as a person. It's rare, and I said this yesterday, it's rare we work with people we don't like. So that short meeting is the beginning of a relationship that you can build on. It's also important as you prepare for the meetings and go into the international marketplace is to know what is original and different about the project that you have to offer. What sets it apart? Because that's what's going to interest the person across from you. They would love to do another Breaking Bad, but they want a Breaking Bad that this is different from, that it's a different Breaking Bad. They want to know what's original and different. And if you can't answer that question, then it's not ready to pitch. You need to know what are the selling points of that project based on who you're talking to. Also key is what is your ownership of the project? Why, of all the projects that you could become involved in, you've chosen this one to meet with this person and spend the next 2 or 4 years of your life? What is your personal connection? What gives you the authority to tell this story or to do this TV series? And I suggest that if you haven't found that, you're not ready to pitch. Even if it's not your property, but you are the producer of it, key is finding out why your way into that property, so that you do have that ownership, so that you can speak with authority. So what is original and different about your project? Then, what are your package of pluses? What are you bringing to the table that sets you apart? And it could be something like you are a new emerging talent and you've just had a short film that's been recognized by the National Screen Institute or the Canadian Film Centre, or you've had a short at a festival, or you've won some prizes. That it could be that you have a team, you're an emerging talent, but you are working with a remarkable production company, which many of the interns are doing here. That production company that has selected you to work with them is one of your package of pluses. It could be access, which broadcasters are incredibly interested in, is what is the access you have to a world that their audience hasn't seen before. And that they want that. And you need to do that work to be able to convince the person you're talking to that you're bringing that package of pluses to the table. I also think that, you know, start with the royal flush. You open up the conversation and you talk about, you know, if there's a direct connection that you can have. But start with what sets you apart. If you've just won an award, if you have a film or a show in the market, you can start from there. In theater, they say, don't bore us, go for the chorus. I say go for the chorus right at the beginning and figure out what it is that will grab the attention so that they want to listen further. So what are your package of pluses? I also think it's really valuable to know in a meeting how long the meeting's going to be. And you should follow that. If you know you have to, okay, I got to tell you this. So my very first meeting was at an international market was at MIPCOM. And I set up my meetings and I did them 1 hour at a time. And I thought, yeah, that should be good. Everything's fine. So I went to my first meeting and was just sort of settling in, and the obviously the sales agent or broadcaster looked at his watch and he said, well, like, I have about 5 more minutes. And I went, I thought we had an hour. He said, well, you know, they're every 20 minutes. And I learned very quickly that the more aware I am of the length of time that I have, then as host, I can complete the meeting before it's time for that person to leave. I think of every pitch meeting that I go into that I'm the host, even though the person that I'm speaking with is may have asked to meet with me or whatever, or it's their country. But it's what can I do to make their job easy so that they understand what I have is something they will want to have. I start every meeting with giving them my business card, facing them. And we talked about this yesterday, but it's hugely valuable when you think that somebody is taking a pitch every 20 minutes or so. They're going to forget who I am. And boy, I would love it if I could just look down there and say, oh, thank you very much, Jan, because the card's right there. You want to make it easy for them, and you want to have them, you want them to have a takeaway. Don't give them a one sheet at the beginning of the meeting, because honestly, you'll lose them as they're pretending that they're reading it, and they're not reading it, and they're not listening to you. So you never want to give them the one sheet at the beginning. The only thing you have to hand them is the business card, and then to open the conversation. And the other point that I think can be incredibly valuable is generally what often happens at a meeting is everybody's rushed. Sheila will tell you how the different markets work in the Canada stands and the Canada sales desk. But in general, you're sitting down at the table, and it often goes like this. Hi, my name is Jan Miller, and what I'd like to do is tell you about... And you haven't taken that moment so that they can actually hear your name and make the connection. it's really worth it. The moment of settling in, making the contact, and then exchanging cards. And I think there's also great value in being aware of the situation. Like often happened this time in Berlin, it was really hot in the Canada stand, well actually the whole building, because it was really hot in Berlin. Can you believe it? So we often started a meeting by bringing the guest a glass of water. It's a simple thing, but suddenly there was that sort of relaxation, there was a more comfort, and you're the host. You're finding a way to make them feel comfortable, so under the best conditions, you can offer them what you have to offer. And I think perhaps the last moment, the last thought before we turn it open to my fellow panelists, we're all equals in this business. That in fact, obviously some of us have more experience, but when you're meeting with somebody, you're bringing something that they potentially have, that they are potentially looking for. There's an equality in that, a mutual respect. So you can be comfortable in knowing that and take the time to connect to your authority and ownership of the material and bring it out to the marketplace. So Canada has 53 treaties, and maybe 54 if India comes through. That would be grand. So we're constantly out in the marketplace, and there's the international markets that many people are familiar with. There's Berlin, Cannes, MIPCOM, and then there's a whole series of smaller markets and smaller festivals. Each may have a specific value depending on what product you're taking to it. So for instance, Guadalajara is not a key market for Canada, and yet there are, I think, at least 2 producers here that will be going to Guadalajara because they have a specific Canada-Mexico project in the works. So they review the landscape of markets and festivals and then choose which one to invest their time and their resources to attend. But how do you prepare for that? So let's begin by asking the lovely Sheila de Laverande from Telefilm Canada, who I run into at many, many festivals and events. And Sheila, so tell me what Telefilm Canada does, both at the television market and at a feature film market. Okay. I think yours works.
Okay. Before I do that, Jen, I just wanted to add 2 bits of advice.
Absolutely.
These are things that Telefilm Canada staff do before going to markets, is buy yourself good shoes. Buy yourself many good pairs of shoes. Because markets are a marathon. Markets and festivals are a marathon. You've got to really be comfortable and be able to move quickly and be able to last the day, because the day starts at 8 o'clock in the morning and it moves until midnight. The second thing is to set your limits, because a festival or a market is full of events and opportunities as well, and social events. Social events are a great opportunity to see the people that you've met during the day, to talk to them in a different social setting, but it's also an opportunity for happenstance, to meet people that you have not met or to be introduced to other people via your own contacts. So use those opportunities. Set yourself a goal that when you go to a social event, yes, it's about the fun, but it's also about using that opportunity to broaden your network. And also getting to bed early is a really good tip.
Yeah, it actually is, because there's, you know, when it's a first time, I think it often happens that a producer will sleep through a meeting while they're at the meeting. Not a good thing. I think that's such a key point.
It really is. I'm serious, because I give myself those rules. I know you give yourself those rules, and it really helps you to build that resilience and get the most out of the marketplace, because they're incredible opportunities for your project, but also to learn about what's happening in the global marketplace. So you've got to be a sponge, you've got to be open to absorb and energetic. So Telefilm Canada's role is really to position the Canadian industry, so this Canadian screen industry, so feature film, television, and new media in the global marketplace. And what we set out to achieve is to really stimulate demand for Canadian product. We want to facilitate access and provide opportunities for the Canadian industry to really increase their visibility in the global marketplace, because when you go to a market, there are films playing every hour, there are meetings happening every half hour. It is a bit of a zoo. So in order to make yourself available, make yourself, visibility, it's all about visibility. But you also, at a market, what we also aim to achieve is really to stimulate sales, because of course the domestic market is not enough. We would need more financing from the sales of our products around the world. And Canadian products, as Michael was saying earlier this morning, are very hot right now. There's a real buzz on Canadian film, Canadian television, new media around the world right now. And there are great opportunities in terms of export. Co-production, as you just mentioned, we may have 54 treaties shortly, but we do have treaties with many, many countries around the world. Many of these treaties are used yearly. Some of them are in development in terms of the relations with those countries. But it's really about those co-production opportunities. And using a market for co-production also is particular. Having a specific project to pitch is one thing, but it depends on where the project is at and how you pitch that project. And most of these markets now have, because co-production is a global phenomenon now, they do have a co-production market attached to the real market.
So what do the stands do? Like, explain sort of the actual structure of a stand, say at Cannes or at MIPCOM, and then the service or facilitation that Telefilm does.
Well, we have Canada business stands at MIPCOM and MIPTV, being the two principal pillar screen content international markets. And I must underline one point is, yes, that Telefilm is the lead agency behind those stands and has been we've been going to these markets now for 25 years. They are really pillar markets. They're still very strong. But we do this in collaboration with partners. And it's very important to know that the provinces, all the provincial agents, most of the provincial agencies are partners in these ventures with us. And that's a very important partnership, and the one that has been going on for many years, and one in which also you can avail yourselves of, because of course some of the provinces offer sort of passport to export monies enabled to get you to those markets. So we work with the provincial agencies. We work very much with the CMPA as well. We work with the embassies and with the Canadian Tourism Commission. So there are an awful lot of partners that make it possible to have a Canada stand at MIPCOM and MIPTV. At MIPCOM and MIPTV specifically, we are also in partnership with the CMF, being a very important funder in terms of television and digital media content. More recently, we've been able also to band forces with the private sector. So we do have the Bell Medias of this world and other private sector companies that are now joining forces to make the Canadian message, make the Canadian brand, and to give more visibility to Canadian content and Canadian creators at these marketplaces.
So the producer comes to the marketplace and they look for the Canada stand or the Canada desk. And what happens at that desk? And as the sort of the host of it, what does Telefilm provide?
Well, MIPCOM, you have to make a delineation between the MIPCOM, MIPTVs, and the Berlin and Cannes. So I'll start with the MIPCOMs and MIPTVs, which are basically buyers and sellers markets. So when you walk into MIPCOM or MIPTV, it really is a frenzy of meetings. They are exhibitors under national stands, so there'll be a stand for Canada. There's the Canada Business Centre. There's one for the British, one for the Finnish, one for the French. Some of these are organized by national funders. Some of them are organized by producers or distributors associations. There's every sort of mix under the planet. And in MIPCOM and MIPTV, what Telefilm and its partners provide is a turnkey service. So exhibitors take a space. Those who just decide to take a space within MIPCOM and MIPTV have a table, not so much a booth. The booths are kind of passé now, and it also takes a lot of room. And of course now with digital media, people are exchanging content before the marketplace. So when they actually get to the market, they're probably doing more deals than previously when they would actually show their wares on the screens. So they're exhibitors. At MIPCOM and MIPTV, we have up between 50 and, say, 70 companies that are exhibiting. And what's phenomenal in the Canada stand is we are the biggest stand in the marketplace. So yay, Canada. But every year, I mean, not every year, but in the last 5 years, that space has grown. So it used to be in one concentrated space, like as if we were right here, and now it's going down the hallway, and now you just keep on going. It's Canada, Canada, Canada. So you see the force of our industry. It's really very eloquent and very, very present.
But what is the solo Canadian producer, which the majority of people are, do in that situation?
So there are producers who do register and to take a space, a meeting space, so they actually have a table, an assigned table. And so those would be more established producers who have, because it does cost money. Going to any of these international markets is a significant investment. And when you take up space, real estate, it's even more significant. So producers, I've always called them the kind of like the orphan participants at the MIPCOMs and MIPTVs, because they do not necessarily have, they have a home under their national umbrella stand, but they don't have an assigned table. That's why you're always fighting for a table. But producers, they will go, there are networking events. We provide networking events for Canadian producers to meet Latin American producers, to meet British producers, to meet French producers. We change the country depending on what the priorities are, strategic priorities are in terms of co-production. But savvy producers will make their appointments ahead of time, and they will meet with other producers around the world at the Canadas. They'll use that space because there's a space allotted for the orphan producers to meet with other producers.
And then let's move quickly to the feature film side. Is it a similar kind of setup? Do you serve the same function at, say, Berlin and Cannes for the independent producer?
The same function. We serve the same function in the sense that it is reinforcing the Canadian presence at a marketplace. So when a French producer or a French distributor or a French sales agent is looking for Canadian product, they know where to go. So from that point of view, yes, but in Cannes and Berlin there is it's called a sales market. So there are exhibitors that take a space and they're actually meeting their clients. Cannes is a different market. Cannes is a very special market because it's a festival and then there's the marketplace attached to it. And at Cannes, the tradition has been what they call the international village. So it's very beautiful, it's right by the ocean, and there are tents. If it's good weather, it's fabulous. If it's bad weather, it's horrific. But in the tents, they've got national tents, so the French tent and the German tent and so forth. And that tent is really a home for Canada. So there is nobody who has an assigned table. It's for producers, it's for distributors, it's for talent. It is really the home. It's a one-stop sort of business center. We have our co-production expert who comes to Cannes, who comes to MIPCOM and MIPTV, and who is there and who is available for Canadian producers if they have co-production questions, or for foreign producers who are looking to co-produce with Canada.
Okay, and I think what's important is when you go to any one of these markets, the first thing you should do once you've registered is go to the Canada stand or the Canada desk, or those are the two names, and introduce yourself to the people at the front reception. It's usually one or two wonderful women that work there, and then give them your card, and then they know who you are, because what often happens is somebody will come in and say, I'm looking for Judy Holm, or I'm looking for Margaret Mardirossian, and the front desk people facilitate making those arrangements. Or they'll say, I'm looking for a producer from Vancouver, or I'm looking for a producer from Newfoundland. And again, if these front people are familiar with who you are, and I have to tell you this, I just figured this out. I just did this for my first time in Berlin this year. I've been going for years, and it suddenly dawned on me this would be very helpful. So I'm hoping I've saved you all 7 years of not knowing how to do that. Okay, so anything you want to add, or shall we move to producers that are actually doing it? Sorry, unlike ourselves.
As if I'm not doing it. Just to mention that all of these markets evolve and change and grow, and it's very important as a producer, as a distributor, as an industry person to really keep your eyes open, keep aware of what the opportunities that each of those festivals or markets offer. Because MIPCOM used to be just about buying and selling, but now it really is a lot more also about promotion, because there is a proliferation. There used to just be MIPCOM and MIPTV in the world. So maybe 25 years ago, there weren't markets, there wasn't a kid's screen, there wasn't necessarily hot dogs, there weren't necessarily the niche markets around the world, which also provide fantastic opportunities for people working in those areas. So what the MIPCOMs and MIPTVs have done is they've added a layer of activities, press conferences, conferences like this one, where companies and talent are able to shine. And so what we do at Telefilm now, working very much in close collaboration, hand in hand really with the CMF, is really try to position Canadian talent and Canadian products in those showcases. So above and beyond what happens in the stand, in terms of the buying and selling transactions, Canada is shining, and Canada is then in the trades, in the trade magazines every day. That's the other thing you have to do. When you're at a market, the first thing you do in the morning is you pick up the trades. You pick up Screen International, you pick up Hollywood Reporter, you pick up...
They're all free and available.
They're all available. There's a rack of stands. You'll probably pick it up 3 times during the day because you'll have one and then you'll lose it. But I wish you read half of it and then you have a meeting and then you read another half. But that's a really important thing, just to get a sense of what's going on in the marketplace.
So that's a great segue into Margaret. Margaret Mardirossian is with Anaïd Productions, which has been going for 20 years. And she's out in Vancouver. It started in Edmonton, which is where I first met her. And I've always been struck by Margaret's ability as an entrepreneur in the business to figure out how to work a marketplace. So Margaret, can you remember the first one and what you felt, and then how you've progressed, what you've discovered?
Well, first of all, I want to say, Jan, that your list of 10 is a fantastic checklist. And even for producers like myself who are going to markets and have been for the last 20 years. Basically, it's almost like being a pilot for an airline company. You know, no matter how many times you've flown, you still have your checklist. And you have to tick things off and just to sort of be assured. And that's a terrific checklist. I would definitely ensure that everybody's got that. My very first market was actually MIP market. And I felt like a little bit of a tourist, where I had heard about these markets, didn't know much about it, and I was sort of like browsing. Went in there and just basically for 2-3 days browsed the booths. And you have to remember, 20 years ago, the world was a lot different than what it is now. In fact, it was almost vital for producers to really think about co-producing, because we didn't have the funding models that we do right now. The CMF wasn't even around back then. Telefilm was, but CMF wasn't. So with respect to that, it was really important to go and attend all of the different markets to get a real sense of what's out there. And you realize how insignificant you are in the big scheme of things.
Thanks, Margaret.
I honestly did feel that way, my very first market. But I'll tell you what was really important was when I finally did have a broadcaster, a Canadian broadcaster. It was Life Network at the time. And they took a chance on us with a series called The Tourist. And that tourist series was great, except that we knew we could not continue doing more unless we had an a pre-sale. And having been to the markets, I looked at some of the Canadian distributors that were out there doing a lot of work. And I knew that I needed to get to the travel channel in the States. And that travel channel, we had approached them a couple of times, and they had said no. But with a distributor who had already been selling to them, we were able to get money for an acquisition of our first season, which really then encouraged a second season with Life Network. And it really helped. We had 3 seasons fully funded because of that opportunity.
So going back to that first time you went to the market, you browsed, and it goes back to that whole idea that you should, that first time to the market, don't set goals so high that you can't achieve them. Right. I think that's what you need to get the lay of the land. Yeah. Tell me, what are the key things you look for or you prepare for when you go to a market now?
So I'll talk about the 3 things that over the 20 years I've come to realize is the most important thing. I've given up on thinking I'm going to close a deal at the market. That's done. What I go there, first of all, is really to get my finger on the pulse of what's going on globally. There are 2 markets that I think are really important, international markets. The MIPCOM.
And the difference between the 2?
And then there's Real Screen.
Okay.
Okay, so Real Screen, for the kinds of programming that we do, which is factual. Factual is an umbrella, my definition of factual, it's an umbrella term for everything that's under it's reality competition, elimination, docu-soap, documentary series, and one-offs as well. Factual. So for that factual world, Real Screen is vital because it touches on 3 very important things for me. One is to find out globally what is going on in the world. Secondly is to get networking opportunities, to find out what all the broadcasters in North America are looking for. And sometimes you also get international. You get Discovery International there in UK as well. And the third thing is distribution. And I have to say, as a producer, I recognize the need to associate myself with a distribution company. And having been through a number of distribution companies, I have finally settled on a company that is a sales agency, which is different from a distributor. But it gives me the opportunity to see them in action. And when they're out there and you see that they are having different kinds of meetings and they've got all the promotional tools around them, and you can actually understand what it is that they're doing. And if you don't have a distributor, it's a great opportunity to meet with them at these international markets. And in fact, as an example too, so another series, which was the very first weight loss series in the world, I might add. This is before Biggest Loser. It was the first weight loss series in Canada. And again, it was greenlit by Life Network.
Called?
Taking It Off.
Taking It Off, yep.
And I could not find a Canadian distributor who would want to take on Taking It Off because weight loss shows had not been done before. And in fact, I remember even an article written by a very famous TV reviewer saying, who would ever want to watch weight loss shows? It's like watching paint dry. Well, now every country has its own weight loss show. So what happened was, again, it was greenlit. We needed financing for a 2nd season. I didn't have a distributor to be able to get any kind of an advance. And so I went out to the international market thinking that I was going to self-distribute it. Big mistake. It works for some, but what I did find was a distributor out of the UK who was interested in distributing it. And thankfully, he was able to sell it to Discovery UK. So Taking It Off went into a 2nd season with Life Network and turned into 4 robust seasons and morphed into X-Weighted for 5 seasons. So that was such a critical financing opportunity, so, having been to the market.
And that came out of the market.
It came out of the market.
And your goal when you went to that market was you knew that you didn't have a distributor.
Yeah.
And as I recall you describing at one point, you actually sort of stood back and watched distributors in action and looked at what they had brought to the market to figure out where the right match was. And then when you did the pitch, you had your package of pluses.
Exactly.
That you could present that brought your distributor on board.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
And is there anything that you take away from your market experience that you will not do again, like something that you've learned doesn't work in a marketplace?
Well, it's the closing of the deals. It's what you said about it's quality of those meetings as opposed to a quantity or being really results oriented in that way, because one has to be flexible and open to opportunities. And it's really, our industry is so lovely and I gravitate towards it because it's a very social industry. It's all about meeting people, connecting with people, finding the types of people that you resonate with. and that perhaps the shows that you're passionate about resonate with them as well.
Okay, I think that's a good segue into Judy Holm. And Judy is, I was particularly interested in bringing her to this discussion because when I first met Judy, I was pitching to her when she was with Polygram. And so she was a distributor and I was looking for support for one of the things that I was running at possibly National Screen Institute. So I'm interested, Judy, if you could talk first about when you received new producers and they'd set up meetings with you, what you valued, what you found was a deterrent, and now you're a producer, what do you bring to the table?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about that. I actually used the Polygram experience in a couple of different ways. I try to remember what it was like being pitched, because there had been times when I was almost asleep about 10 seconds into it. No, that's not true. Yeah. But it's like a script, right? When they tell you about a feature film script, it's the first 10 pages, and if you're not engaged by that time, then you're probably not going to be engaged. And in a pitch, if you're not engaged over the first minute, you're not going to be engaged. And if you're pitching that person, you have to recognize when they shut off. Because if you keep going after they've shut off, they will never meet with you again. Or they'll just have you down on a little list saying, So the other thing I was thinking about, having worked with Polygram, was that we had a script that I'd written, actually, that I had to go out and pitch. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's so hard to do that. And I thought, okay, I used to do that when I was with Polygram, which was a big company, so I'm just going to pretend I work for them and I'm pitching it for somebody else. And that was really great. It was like I could just call up anybody and get a meeting, and it was fine. And then after, you have to deliver on the pitch, but that's okay. So, you know, and the recognition factor goes up and down, right? When you're with a big company, it's people want to meet with you, and then when you become an individual producer, or did you call us phantom producers? Orphans. Orphans. When you're an orphan producer, that, you know, people are much less likely to want to meet with you. I was thinking that the three important things to remember when you take, my three important things to remember when you go to a market are that it's all about the product that you have, it's about the relationships that you have, and it's about the timing. So that, as Jan was saying earlier, if your project isn't ready to pitch, then don't pitch it. Also, the things that everyone has been saying, make sure you're pitching it to the right people. Make sure that you, if you can't afford it yourself, know somebody who has IMDb Pro, and you can look and see everything that they've done, and you can look at Senando, and you can see everything that people do, and so you get to know who does what.
Explain what Senando is.
Senando is a website that's set up by the festivals, isn't it? Did it start out with Cannes?
Festival.
It's a database.
Yeah, it's a database, and you can go in it and see, first of all, who's going to the festivals, and second of all, what they do and the projects that they represent and all of that. And one of the most important things, I think, before you even go to a festival is you know, working in Canada. There are amazing programs here, like the OMDC's program, what's it called, with the producers at TIFF, and the International Film Financing Forum that they do. Newfoundland and Labrador does these incredible programs where they take their producers out to markets and they set up meetings with really important
delegations,
people.
yes.
Oh, those are incredible. Because for scripted producers, it's all about finding the right co-producer. And that's all about spending time with people in the program. Jan is involved with the TAP program, which is an incredible program, because you meet producers from all over Europe, from the States, and from other countries, South Africa, things like that. And you spend 3 weeks with them in different places. And so by the time that's over, you get a feeling of who you could work with, who you probably couldn't work with, who feels right, and all of that. So, because when you go to a market, it's going to be the producer that's going to bring financing to the table, unless you have something, you know, that's already has a lot of financing in it out of Canada, that has stars in it that people think will sell around the world, which is highly unlikely for us to have at that point in time. You're never going to get pre-sales for a scripted project. So the thing that you want to do is get to know the producers, go to the networking events, and see who it is that you might want to work with, and who does the kinds of films that you do, and who has the sort of size company that you have, so that you know there's a certain compatibility. Documentary is completely different because we also do documentaries, right? So we go to IDFO, we go to Real Screen sometimes, we go to
Hot Docs.
Well, Hot Docs is a great resource. Hot Docs and TIFF, of course, are great resources in Canada. You know, we've been to Leipzig, we've been to a bunch of different places, and there you can look for a co-producer if you have a project that has a big budget. But you also want to get to know all the broadcasters because you want to do international pre-sales on your documentary. You have to have a broadcaster in Canada first, but what you're selling with a documentary is the idea, the access, and the talent of the filmmakers, right? You don't need to have, you know, Susan Sarandon on board. You don't need to have somebody like that. It's much more of the concept.
I think it's really interesting because you have here two really established and successful producers, and one is looking primarily for sales when you go to the market, whereas in the case of Judy, she's looking for an international co-production partner, which is you said that you rarely are looking for a co-producer when you go to the marketplace.
Yes, when we were talking, I mentioned that it's, for what I do necessarily, it's really not about the co-producer as it is understanding what is hot in the market right now.
Right.
And I just want to touch on a little bit on formats too, because of the fact that even if you're doing Canadian localized programming, it's really important to go out into the markets to see what other countries are up to. And every country has formats that they're selling. And so sometimes it's something that we haven't heard of here in Canada or North America. And it's good to be able to be the first one out the gate with it.
And to bring it back to Canada, right.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. I just want to say one more thing, and talk to Canadian sales agents as well and find out if you're going to a market to do scripted, find out what the buzzwords are, because some market you'll go to and if you say, oh, it's a drama, you'll get shut off immediately, or oh, it's a coming of age, and no, this year, no coming of age. So you have to think of a different way to describe it to somebody. Oh, it's a young adventure story. It's a something, right? Sales agents will know that, and you can just go and ask anybody. It's the same with televisions, like episodic or serialized. And 1 year it's this, and 1 year it's that. And
it is staying current. You constantly, like, not only reading the trades when you go into the market, but reading the trades every morning here. And if you're a member of CMPA, which is incredibly valuable, I have found as an independent, they have the daily news flash, which gives you a great overview of the industry. It's incredibly valuable. We have time for a couple of questions, if there are any that people have.
I'm going to show them one more thing.
Yes.
Which is, I give them a business card, but I also give them a postcard of what show I'm pitching, because then they've got, it just has the log line on the back, so there's not much to read, but it's got space so they can make notes if they want to, and then they've got a picture to help them remember what I'm pitching them.
And she's pitched me Fabulous 7, and I want to see it made. Are there any questions? Okay, I think that, yes. Can you have a postcard?
Sure.
There you go, first taker.
Only if you finance it. I'm not kidding. It's a fabulous project, Fabulous 7. Okay, I think what's also really valuable to note is what everybody has within their own province. That Sheila mentioned it, but your provincial agency is a remarkable resource for you. Many of them travel to the markets. Their whole goal is to bring business to their province, to your province, to help you make the right contacts. At every market we see Manitoba Film and Music, we see Film and Creative Industries Nova Scotia, OMDC, the Yukon was in Berlin, which is fantastic as an emerging market. And they have a pool of money that's there for producers to go to attend markets. And they're a resource that they will say, if an emerging producer comes into BC Film, they would readily say you could talk to Margaret Mardirossian and take her for a coffee and she can talk to you about what it is to do a marketplace. What I have found perhaps the best thing about this industry is how willing people are to share information. They, you know, take the time, don't use their time, waste their time, but people want to share what they know because it makes us all stronger. As a last comment, I think that's right from what I'm saying, yeah. So we'll just, Margaret, we'll start with you and we'll move through.
I just want to give a little example of my very first, so Banff Television Festival, Media Festival is in our backyards, and it's an awesome place to be. And I remember sometimes it's great to just sit down and just listen to what's going on around you. And I remember a wonderful gentleman by the name of Derry O'Brien having a conversation at the Banff Television Media Festival. At that time it was Banff Television Festival, having drinks with his buddies and yakking. When I went to my very first MIP market, I remember how important it was for me to get to the Irish pub night thing on the beach. You know, I had to get like
that
at that market. That it was at that. No. I learned that at the market you had to sort of go drinking, you know, with the people in order to be able to network. And so, but I had to score tickets to this Irish party, and I remembered this gentleman, Derry O'Brien, who was talking very loudly in the pub, and I happened to see him, and he was with his buddies having a drink. And I went up to him and I said, do you remember me? And he said, no. And I go, Banff Television Festival, 1995. And he goes, okay. And his buddy started to rib him. I said, I won't tell anybody about what happened if I can get 6 tickets to the Irish party. He says, here you go. So I had 6 tickets, got to the party. It was a great opportunity to network. So it was really important to listen to what's going on.
Well, listen, and I think you're suggesting bribery. So.
Okay, that too. And a little drinking doesn't hurt, yeah.
But I can also say, just as a non-drinker my entire life, you can still make it work. All right. Judy.
Well, as a non-drinker and still a sort of a shy person, I bring my husband, who's my partner in the company, but so he's talent, but he also enjoys a cocktail, so it's perfect. I was going to make one other suggestion, which was as much as we have our provincial and national bodies to go to, everybody else does too in Europe. So for instance, when we were in Berlin just now, we have a project that I wanted to do as maybe a Scandinavian co-production. So we just set up meetings with the film commissioner from Denmark, the one from Iceland, the one from, you know, and they will tell you everything, and they're very, very good. And they'll suggest companies that you can work with. They'll suggest regional funds that you can go to. So access those anytime you can.
So if you meet with somebody that isn't actually a producer, you can collect additional information.
Yeah.
And remember that people don't want to be asked questions that can be answered on the website. They're looking for questions that reveal the way you're approaching your work and life. They're not your one-stop Wikipedia. That's not their goal. Sheila, last-minute comment.
I think building your network is essential. We've talked about many ways of doing that. I think before you go to a market, set your objectives, do your agenda, do exactly what Jan says in terms of when you're there and doing the pitch, but do your homework too afterwards, which means follow up with each person that you met. Make sure that you continue doing that. That's very easy not to do because you get back, you're tired, and you fall into something else, business as usual, and you don't forget to follow up, but it's a lot of work. The second thing is ask your peers. I mean, this is an incredible conference. There are great people here. So make sure you ask questions. Ask as many questions as you need to. And finally, many of the festivals and markets now have opportunities for either short filmmakers, because short film is also very sexy and very important now in terms of getting exposure, in terms of talent scouting and so forth. So, for instance, even at Cannes, the Cannes Film Festival has what they call the Short Film Corner. And last year, I got to tell you, there were 40 short filmmakers from across Canada who came to Cannes. It was their first time, did many of the things that we're talking about here, just kind of scouting the marketplace, getting a lay of the land, understanding whether competition. The world is super competitive, the global marketplace, so see what other people are doing. what other creative voices are making, what other companies, what other business models are using. That's really important if you want to stay on the edge and you want to be competitive today.
Did you want to say something?
No, absolutely. The competition is right. Yeah.
I think that in quick summary, it's obvious that if you're in the business for the long run, you need to go to the markets. And you need to allow yourself a growing pattern to your life, thinking of yourself as an investment to a long-term career, because we all started for our very first markets, and now we're talking about how to work a market. So hopefully this session gave you some tangible takeaways, and we look forward to seeing you at Cannes, Berlin, Guadalajara, Cartagena, wherever. If you see me, come on up and I'll introduce you to somebody. And thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Sheila. Thanks a lot, everyone.